remember that in 1980, the Summer Olympics were held in Moscow in what was then the Soviet Union. The United States led a 61-nation boycott. President Jimmy Carter specifically announced it because the Soviets had invaded Afghanistan in December of 1979. 30 years later, the Winter Olympics are in Vancouver, British Columbia. Canadian and U.S. forces are on the ground in Afghanistan, and Bob Costas is going to a live feed from Camp Eggers in Kabul. So there's no boycott, and so it's okay when we do it. This is the hypocrisy that our message is to the rest of the world. We're the good guys, we're the bad guys. My take-home message is today, it is a little complex because it weaves back and forth with history and what's going on now, but we have to look at what happened before September 11th, 2001 to understand where we are today. I'm going to try to present these issues to you. That the occupation of Iraq, which of course 9/11 was used as a reason to invade, is an extension of the occupation of Palestine. That what's happening in Palestine and in Iraq are joint American-Israeli operations. That Zionist influence, among others, that are guiding U.S. foreign policy are not in our interest, and that we need to end the entire occupation. Now here's why I want to say something about that. There's my dad, born and raised in Basra, Iraq. He came to the U.S. in the 1960s for his graduate studies, where he met a nice Jewish girl from New York. They met in 1963, got married in 1968, so I have basically, it's in my blood. But with an Arab father and Jewish mother, I am 100% Semite. So if you want to, you can insult either side of my family, and that would be anti-Semitic. If you can wait till the Q&A, that'd be great. I think that a lot of you have encountered it as well when you get dismissed as a conspiracy theorist. Keep in mind that when people cannot argue the facts, they just jump to personal attacks, because that's all they got. Their homeland in the Arab world. To the north, to the Litani River, to the northeast, to the Wadi Auda, and sorry, I don't speak Arabic except for swearing, that's the only thing I can get the pronunciation right on. The southern border will be mobile. Who has a mobile southern border? Into the Sinai, and pushed into Sinai at least up to this Wadi. Wadi is a riverbed. So if you notice the borders that they're seeking, it's because they're in the desert, and the very important resource is water. So, and this is on the map, this is from 1918, the World Zionist Congress, okay? We got a problem here, that this is somebody else's land. Above the doorway to the Knesset, this is a report, I've never been there, and these are reports written years ago. I assume it's still there, but I don't know. They had written in Hebrew, "Our land Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates." That's concerning. This is why. This has been the partition and an ethnic cleansing of Palestinians that has come about as a result of the establishment, initially, of the State of Israel in 1948, and then successive invasions and occupations since then. Now, I can send you this picture. It's easy to find on the internet. But when people start talking about countries getting wiped off the map, you think of this picture. Historically, Israel, as of 1948, is sitting in historic Palestine. It's what Palestinians remember as Al-Nakba, the catastrophe, when over 725,000 Palestinians were driven out. They are now in diaspora, over 400 villages were destroyed, and some of the terrorist organizations who were responsible for driving people out at that time were the Irgun and the Stern Gang. Invaded and occupied the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt in 1967. They had to give it back. Invaded and occupied the Golan Heights of Syria in 1967. Golan Heights remain occupied. Invaded and occupied southern Lebanon twice. They got kicked out in 2000. They tried again in 2006 and got pushed back. So, if there is concern for Israel's neighbors of self-defense, it's understandable. Also, on June 7th, 1981, the Israelis bombed Iraq. They targeted a nuclear facility. They were just in the early stages of developing weapons, or nuclear technology, ultimately for weapons, but bombed by the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, why would Iraq be seeking a nuclear facility? Why would Iran be seeking a nuclear nuclear facility. Because Israel, which has invaded and occupied its neighbors, has between 200 and 400 nuclear weapons. If we want to talk about nuclear non-proliferation, look for the one in the neighborhood who's been attacking its neighbors in this conflict. So a lot of my colleagues, I was still working in medicine at the time, you would think these, my colleagues and myself would be very educated, at least book smart, and they said, why do they hate us? Now many people were asking that. Maybe it's elitist of me to expect more from my colleagues. Why do they hate us? Well, I don't know what happened on that day. I don't know who orchestrated everything. But they hate us because we're not spreading democracy and freedom. Though we say we do as a cover for what we're doing. But the reality is that we've been killing innocent people for a long, long time. Dead children bothers people a lot. And because to most of the world today, we are the terrorists. If you have the opportunity to travel abroad, ask people what they think of Americans today. So, occupation of Iraq as an extension of the occupation of Palestine. Operation Iraqi Freedom. Now, it was initially called Operation Iraqi Liberation, but the acronym was OIL, so they had to change that. That was bad PR. I can't make that up. That's in a press briefing by Ari Fleischer, I think. As I see it, it was like a perfect storm of interests. The oil interests and Zionist neoconservatives. Now, not exclusively, but these were two major forces. Of course, oil interests, we know the long history of the Bush family in the oil industry, Dick Cheney and Halliburton, Condoleezza Rice and Zalmay Khalilzad were both working for Chevron. Zalmay Khalilzad became the U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan after we invaded Afghanistan, then became the U.S. ambassador to Iraq, which, as if the Iraqis don't resent us enough, you know, we could have at least picked someone who speaks Arabic. And what they called for were three major objectives. Number one, cutting off peace talks with Yasser Arafat. This is 1996. Number two, launching military assaults on the occupied territories of Palestine. And number three, get rid of Saddam Hussein. Now, who were Pearl, Fife, and Wormser working for in 1996? Then and current Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. So high-ranking members of the Israeli administration with a certain policy agenda became high-ranking members of the Bush administration, advising and shaping our foreign policy. Netanyahu is at the top of your screen, then Ehud Olmert, Ariel Sharon, and Shimon Peres. Iraq attack America or use nuclear weapons against us? I'll tell you what I think the real threat is, and actually has been since 1990. It's the threat against Israel. The American government doesn't want to lean too hard on it rhetorically because it is not a popular sell. No, but we were attacked on September 11th, and we wanted to avenge what happened, and we wanted to launch a war on terror, and we want to save other people and bring them democracy and freedom. That's a much better pitch than this one. Israel and Iraq. Just within the last month, Tony Blair came before the toothless inquiry on Iraq, but at least the British people demanded something. We're a long way from even lip service to asking questions. So this was just several weeks ago, and Tony Blair admitted that Israeli officials influenced and participated in the decisions by the United States and Great Britain to attack Iraq. They were present at meetings with Bush and company in Texas in 2002. So that was a major part of all this. So that's why I'm bringing up Israel, because as a result of our following 9/11, the story of 9/11 was used as a lie to tie to Iraq, and we invaded Iraq based on lies. The IDF has been to Fort Bragg, home of U.S. Special Forces. Now the Peshmerga, of course, the Kurdish leadership supported the invasion of Iraq, and the Peshmerga joined U.S. forces as part of the invasion.